君の中にある赤と青き線それらが結ばれるのは真の像
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to What Do You Say Anime. I'm your host, Peter. On today's episode, with my co-host, Pat, we will be discussing and reviewing the new Makoto Shinkai film, Suzume, and asking ourselves, is it okay to simp over inanimate objects? Before we get started, we like to always go over our movie-going experience. So, Pat, how was it like adventuring to the theaters this time around?
Oh, it was great. Yeah. For one, even though this was an advanced showing, it was actually in one of the main theaters, one of the bigger, 200 capacity theaters rather than like when I saw Kaguya recently or a couple of the other movies that have come out. They were in the smaller 20 to 30 seat theaters. So this was nice to be back in the full size, the IMAX 2D experience, Uh, had my Coca-Cola icy like always, and it was a great time. I mean, the crowd was good too. Well, it wasn't too crowded tonight with the advanced screening, uh, but it was good. Like everyone was enjoying it, laughing, and a great experience overall. What about you, Pete?
Yeah, I got my nice $10 popcorn. It was about 80% full fill, I would say. I had to go to a different theater than I normally go to. I had to go like a half an hour away from my house, so that was interesting. It was in a shopping mall, and then when I was leaving, like the gates were closed to go like I came into the mall, and then when I was leaving, the gates are shut, so that you can't go into the mall. I was like, okay, well, how do I get out of
Yeah.
here? So then I like walked down the hall. I eventually found like a staircase that led to a hallway, which led to another staircase, which let me out of the mall, but like on the back door. And then it's like as soon as I opened it, they must share it with like a restaurant, and there was just like four dudes smoking a cigarette. I was just like, oh, hey, and I just walked away. I was like, it was super fucking awkward, but I was just like, you know what? I just got out of this sick ass movie. Can't wait to come home and talk to Pat about it because, as we always do, we like to get the review out ASAP and talk about our experiences. And this time it was with, probably the biggest director in anime today, I would say, Makoto Shinkai. And I did a Weathering with You one like way back when, and this finishes the trilogy of his big three, I think. I want to talk to you about that if you think that there's more. But I think maybe just do like first impressions. What do you thought going into this? What were you expecting, and um, were you enjoying what you saw?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So first impressions, and we'll keep it spoiler free. I think.
I
I
mean, if we could talk spoilers.
I guess so. Yeah. If someone's listening to this by now, they should. But yeah. So either way, I I didn't know what to expect going in. I knew to expect like three things: beautiful weather, like effects, and rain, and everything else. Uh, a talking chair and cat at different points in the movie, and just supernatural stuff to happen between a boy and a girl. That's all I really knew to what to expect going in. And I was proud of myself. I avoided spoilers entirely for this movie, and I guess it was probably easier because it wasn't like I was seeing it, a few months later than the English release or the full on like American English release. But I stayed completely spoiler free, and I'm so glad I did because it is pretty spoiler heavy of a movie, I would say. So again, if you're listening to this but without having watched it, I think you can tell already. Both of us recommend it. Go
Yes.
watch it, come back and listen, and then talk to us in the comments about this instead. But oh man, I mean, again, the opening scene is just gorgeous. It's stunning, and it sets up the entire mood, I think, for the movie. Uh, Immediately, it then breaks into the usual Makoto Shinkai transitions where the character conversations feel very real and just casual. Like the characters, even though they're these side characters that get two lines, like her friends back at school, super normal, very just authentic. I don't know how else to put it. Like again, he does it so much better than anyone else, I think, where he brings to life these characters in so few lines of dialogue or in in their actions and the way they react to things. It's wonderful. I know, Pete. I'm rambling here. What were your first
No,
impressions?
I agree. It's not in the sense of like Your Name, where I think the side characters play a more pivotal part of the story, but they still provide like a pivotal part of her character. And I did thoroughly enjoy like that brief conversation she had when eating lunch with these two schoolgirls that later, I mean, that didn't play any role really in the story, but like in that specific scene, they did. So I thought like you said before, it felt real, it felt casual. It didn't feel like in anime, to be honest. That's kind of like one thing that I really like about it, where it's not. It can be exaggerated in some points, but it still holds that feeling of this is the message that they're trying to send, of it being more realistic than fantasy at the time, or like more like anime, because a lot of times they can be overly dramatic to the point where it seems not real. So props to them on keeping the dialogue in something that kept me, you know, intrigued but also real, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely. No, it does. It does. Well, because like, sometimes you can tell what the characters are gonna say before they say it, right? Just because of a
100%.
setting or what's gonna happen, and you can kinda know what they're gonna say, but in this I don't know, Makoto always it catches me off guard a little bit. Like, if they again, I laughed a lot. This is probably the most I've laughed in a movie of his. Uh, I mean, I remember loving Weathering with You and thinking it was very funny, but I also this one did a good job of going back and forth between very serious, important moments and very funny things too. And I think the best example of that is in the car ride after Suzume and her mother, Tamaki, I believe is her name, her aunt, I should
Yep.
say. They right after they have their argument, and they, they split up, but then they come back together, and the guy's driving, and he's like, no, this song doesn't work. This song doesn't work. And then a song comes on that's like, we should never fight, like, and it's it's like, yeah, this is the song. Like that had me dying laughing in the theater. That character added so much to the final act of the movie, I think. And it like like it shouldn't like it's not something that any anime can do. A lot of anime do it very poorly with the just surprise tonal shifts and comedy trying to mix in with the serious moments. I don't know. It felt. I think another show that does this really well is Kaguya-sama, right? Like Love Is War, where they'll have the story will be progressing, and like Kaguya and Shinomiya will be having a serious conversation, but it's beneath a layer of comedy.
Yes.
Well,
Yep.
and this, I think, it wasn't the same style of conversations where they're trying to outwit each other like in Kaguya, but in this case, it was much more of a trying to emotionally reach each other and understand that why is Suzume not telling me what's going on? Why won't she tell me? Is she interested in a boy? What has she been
Mhm.
running away literally across the country for? And I think for an American's perspective, it'd be like going from like DC all the way up to past New York to Boston. Like that's how far they traveled. It is a significant trip that they were going on, and it's like, why are you not telling me in the same way that Tamaki won't ever admit to her that she held her life back or that there were things she does, but she doesn't actually feel that way, like that. It's hard to communicate that when you're just always on the move and trying to catch back up to her. It was so beautiful. I
It
really loved it.
it was, and I think that plays a part of Shinkai's storytelling, where I think at the end of the story, there's always a theme, there's always a message that he was trying to send. Where and whether it was with you, it was like I'll pick love over like the world. Like that was the message that he chose. In Your Name, it was like love will find a way. And then this was a little different because I do think that there was this like love undertone, but I don't think that was like the main point of the relationship. It was, which I think like the symbolism of this is literally Suzume closing doors. It's her closing the door of her past that she's been holding back this whole time, of this trauma that she went through. I mean, she went through a natural disaster, which is another thing I want to bring up later, but natural disaster of losing her mother, and still kind of holding on to this hope of whatever is on the other side that she can see. And at the end of the movie, we see that she's able to finally close the door on that part of her life. And I was like, oh my god, that was so fucking good. Like the whole thing was just the symbolism was so good. And I was a little concerned because I don't know if you felt this way either, but there was a part maybe like even like 80% of the way through the movie, I didn't know like what the message they were trying to send in it. And I think that's like kind of the beauty of this is like, well, guess what? All of these pieces were coming together for this one big ass scene. I was like, genius. Genius. It was so well written.
Peak, yes, peak. Did you notice too, like those, like you said, the closing the doors and accepting your past, and then also being willing to accept your future? I think is a big
Oh
part of
yeah,
this.
100%
Did,
that too.
did you notice all of the places were places that a child would have pivotal moments with their whether with their parents or in their life. So a school was one of them, and the amusement park was another location. My brain's blanking on what was it, like an observatory, the one that was actually in their original town or something like that. I don't remember, but yeah, I know we just saw the movie, but it's it's so hard to remember these details
Yeah,
sometimes. But
because like yeah. Because then when they were in Tokyo, it was in like the subway. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of like the school, the amusement park, and then Kobe was no Kobe was the amusement park. Yeah, well, yeah, the locations mattered. Yeah.
yeah, the locations were, yeah, like again, this whole movie, as it always does with Shinkai, felt thought out so well in advance. Nothing happens by mistake on the screen. Every single person that she talks to and interacts with, other than the CGI characters, matters. Every single person, every single conversation meant something, and I adore that. And it's again one of the reasons why I love all of his movies so much. But man, like like, all of her friends that she made along the way too that support her. I loved, in the end, credits, getting to see her enjoying that trip back with Tamaki, showing her aunt, "Yeah, these are the people I met along the way," like, and which, of course, isn't in hindsight, it's like, "Oh, yeah, don't worry, I was fine. Look at who
Mhm.
I was with this whole time." But it's also just it's her welcoming Tamaki more into her life and showing her what I did on this journey to well, to literally save Japan, and but also earn earn my right to move on from my past as well. I think and be that person that the child version of me saw. I liked that. Time loops are usually very hard to do well,
Mhm.
I think, and I don't know. I normally don't like them, but I think I was willing to make an exception in this movie because it was that the chair, right, symbolizes her connection to her mother, or her holding on to the past. And what was the child, or what does child Suzume need more than anything in that moment where she's lost in, what was it called, the ever after, I
Yep.
think. Uh what does she need more? She needs the stability. She needs to know that she has had a mother. She has someone in her life, right?
Mhm. The
And
stability, like the chair maybe represents like the stability, something holding her up or something like that. That's kind of like what I was getting as well, with the same reason why the chair only had three legs, that like she lost a piece of her mother. Um, that's kind of like what I got. I don't know if that's a reach, but that's kind of like what I thought like the symbolism of the three legs meant.
for sure. Well, yeah, it was a damaged or fractured relationship, where she never got to say goodbye, right? She never
Yep, true.
actually got closure on where her mother, at least in the movie, they don't say like, oh, they found her body or like whatever. Like, no, it's just she's gone.
Yep.
She was a nurse and she's gone. Um, and obviously with the way that she blacks out those pages too, she just can't cope with losing that mother. Um, to the point where she ends up in the ever after somehow by
Hmm.
opening that door and as a little child and wandering, and then again what we originally are supposed a big red herring of what we think is her mother actually turns out to be Suzume, of course,
Yes,
standing
that was
there.
cool. That was
I thought
really
that was
cool.
really cool. I didn't expect it. I don't know if maybe I'm just dense and stupid, but I didn't. I did not expect that
Well,
at all. That
I thought it was
that
a
didn't
I
like.
thought it was a flashback, and then well, like in the beginning, and then like realizing that like they're like meshing at the end because he kind of does that in his movies with time. Well, at least he did that with Your Name, where like the timelines kind of intertwine for just like a little bit. And yeah, that's kind of what I got from it. I thought it was really cool.
Oh, so good. The cats being gods was not something I really expected. Like, I guess once they started talking, it was like, oh, this is what's gonna happen in this movie. Okay. Uh, it yeah, it was weird. I gotta
I wonder
say,
if
like,
that's like
especially the
that
black
must
cat.
is that like a symbolism thing in Japan maybe? Like I'm not entirely sure to be honest.
I know foxes are big in their
Mhm.
culturally. Again, I'm probably making a fool of myself, only talking off of what very little research I've done. So I'd imagine cats are also, I don't know, the Egyptians worship them, right? So surely, and we worship them. I mean, we let them live in our fucking houses,
Mhm.
and do whatever the hell they want nowadays too. So I imagine there was some significance to that in a lore or mythological sense, right? One thing I loved, being the history nerd that I am, was they talked about a disaster about 100 years ago or so. And what was that disaster? The Great Fucking Fire of Tokyo, right?
Mhm.
Or Kyoto. That was one of the worst natural disasters in Japan's history. It's
Yep.
like, oh, they attributed that to what the gods, or the worm, whatever. That was the last big disaster. And I liked the idea too that all of these natural disasters that happen, some of them, like the earthquakes, right, too, they'd start out small, 3.0, very barely noticeable, and then they would blow. If they didn't save it in time, it turned into a bigger deal. It turned into an actual natural disaster. Imagine that was real life. Like, how cool that would that be to think, like, oh yeah.
I wanted to touch on that because it's kind of like a theme with his movies are natural disasters. Your Name, it's a meteorite collision colliding with the Earth. Weathering with You is to me was like climate change, like global warming, and then this was earthquakes. And it's like something that Japan has like experienced like throughout their history. And I was like, I wonder if like that's like a I'm just like intrigued on like how he starts like his writing process. It's like, okay, this is going to be which natural disaster am I going to write about? Okay, we're gonna do maybe the next one's like typhoons or something. I don't know, but it's just like every movie has like a theme with like either weather or natural disasters. And I think it's like really interesting how he does that, and then ties it in with everything else that he does.
Yeah, our co-host Miles would berate us both for calling it a meteorite. It was a comet,
It's comet,
actually.
sorry.
Yeah.
Then when it hits the Earth, then it's a meteorite.
Correct. There you go, buddy.
There we go.
We
I
literally
learned
had this
something
conversation
today. I
had this
learned.
conversation like 3 days ago, so
Hmm.
that's why I'm bringing it up. But yeah, alright, so what else? So
I want to talk about
did you
Easter
notice
eggs if you
you want to
because there's a few that I know. There's one for sure that I know was an Easter egg, and there's one I think it's a little bit of a reach, but at the same time, I think like it's like some of it's like an homage. Okay, so here's my reach one first. I think part of the beginning was like an homage to Miyazaki. So in the beginning, they are in the Miyazaki prefecture, and so to me, I was just like, oh, before they announced that it's the Miyazaki prefecture, they're in a helicopter. It says like Miyazaki Broadcasting. So a thing with Miyazaki is in all of his films, he loves aviation. A lot of his themes in his films are centered around flying or some form of flying. It's like, oh, that's interesting. But then they said like, oh, they're in the Miyazaki prefecture. I'm like, okay, so maybe that's not it. But then when we get introduced to Daijin, they start talking about how it looks like the cat from A Whisker Away, and then he has like a scene where he glows up his eyes that looks exactly like Totoro. And I'm like, you know what? I do think that these are like subtle nods to Miyazaki in this film.
I think that that's a bit of a reach, but who
Okay,
knows? Like, again, I am not as into Miyazaki or Ghibli films either. To be fair, so I didn't particularly notice them. But the cat's design uh looked very like, I don't know, Ghibli. It
very
looked like a
yes.
Ghibli cat. Both cats did, and of course that might just be the nature of them being mythological and whatever, like,
Mhm.
hand drawn like in the same way. But um I do think that's interesting. What was your
Okay,
more
this one,
specific Easter eggs?
this one, I'm gonna claim it right now. I'm the first person to notice this in like the entire world. So
Okay.
when Suzume is in Sota's apartment, he has a jacket and a hat hanging up on a like a hanger rack thing, and it's the exact outfit of the lead singer of Radwimps in the song Zen Zen Zens, which is like the opening song of Your Name. If you watch the music video, the lead singer is wearing that exact outfit. It's like a big ass blue hat with like a trench coat, and it's the exact same thing that's hanging in his apartment. I was like, that's 100% a reference to Radwimps, because Radwimps does all the music for Shinkai films. I'm like, that is not a reach. I am claiming that right now.
Jesus Christ, Pete, do you have a life? Honestly,
No.
like,
No, but
I mean,
it's very iconic. If you've seen the music video for Zen Zen Zens, it's I think it's a very unique look, because he wears like a huge blue like uh bucket hat thing and this huge trench coat, and they're just playing in like the middle of the field. And I was like, that's it.
okay. I mean, I'll take your word for it. That's a realistic thing to do, though, right? You want to show appreciation to someone who's done now 3 of your movie's scores and been
Hmm.
part of why they were so successful too, right? Like the music in this is
Ooh,
so good, and you don't
I
even
want to
hear
talk
the
about that.
you don't hear Radwimps very much. It doesn't sound very
That's a huge
Radwimpy until
negative for
the
me.
end.
That's a
I get
huge
that.
negative.
I get that. I do feel that. I guess my big Easter egg that I saw was that there was this restaurant that she went to, I believe in Kobe.
McDonald's.
It was called McDonald's, and that's a reference to the real life restaurant called McDonald's.
Oh, sick Easter egg. They also
I
do
know. I'm
that in
really.
Weathering with You.
I don't know if you noticed or not. I just figured I'd. Yeah. So there you go. There's another reference right there. It's a reference to the Weathering with You uh verse or multiverse, I guess.
Yes, the first instance of McDonald's in anime was in
Do
Weathering with You.
did you go in expecting this to be a in the same universe
100%.
as Weathering with You and
Uh,
Your Name? Because I expected them to tie in the natural disasters, like the worm or whatever, into the other. At least that was my initial thought, where I was like, oh, this will explain all the natural disasters. Then I thought about it and it was, I believe they talk about in Tenki no in Weathering with You, they talk about the rain gods and like
mhm.
I believe like Raijin and some of the other mythological gods. And so I wonder if it was just different categories, I guess, of like not categories, but you know what I mean. Like it was a different world though, because like as or at least a different time, because we saw Tokyo and it was fine. It
Mhm.
wasn't. It was under attack of an earthquake, not a deluge of rain. So I thought that was surprising to see that. Like I don't know, again, I had no idea going in whether it was going to be or not, but the second it started with natural disasters, my brain went, "All right, I need to watch out for Mitsuha,
Yep.
and I need to watch out for what's their name? I can't remember the Weathering with You characters, but they were on my radar as well."
I bet there's like one scene where like they're on the train, and if you like slow mo it, there's like a little silhouette of like one of the characters from Your Name. But like that's what I was thinking too, especially because I was thinking more Weathering with You, because there was a few scenes where Suzume is just like falling from the sky, which is like the iconic scene from Weathering with You. I was like, what if they're falling in the background somewhere while she's falling? Something along like those lines. Oh
That would have
man.
been pretty funny. Little Easter egg.
Can
All
we
right.
talk about Radwimps though?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think that when my biggest thing going into like a Makoto Shinkai film, like you said, we know the animation's gonna be stunning. Like we know it's going to be like a great film. But like I think what separates it from a lot of other movies is like the soundtrack. And I'm sure this has a great soundtrack. They didn't really play it that much in the movie, which I thought was a huge bummer, because think about how Your Name starts. Think about like the Grand Escape during Weathering with You when they're falling from the sky. Like iconic scenes with an iconic song. And while I liked the song at the end of the movie, we had to wait 2 hours to get a Radwimp song, and I thought that was very disappointing, because I think there were scenes where they could have implemented some form of like fun song that Radwimps does while she's like hanging out with Chica, or while she's like working part time at her like host club thing that she was doing for a second there. Like, I feel like they could
Yeah,
have
that was a little weird.
implemented something like that. Did that affect you at all, or no?
Not really, because I enjoyed the music enough. I could still tell it was like Radwim's doing. At least I think it was Radwim's doing like the background music, right? Because for me it was more just less vocal, So
Yeah, I
like you
guess.
said,
Yeah.
there wasn't as much of the lead singer of Radwim's, again, don't know his name, and then the female singer that sang with them in Weathering with You
Is
a
that the
lot.
same one?
I thought it was. It sounded like Koto Miura or something like that is her name, I think. Maybe I'm making that shit up, and you know what? People can
I
tell
mean,
me
it
if I
wouldn't
am.
surprise me. They use a lot of the same like groups with their music, so
Right. Yeah. So I think they were definitely still the ones doing all of that background music, and it was really, really pretty, and I enjoyed it enough. But I do see where you're coming from. Where yeah, I was like, I haven't heard a male sing yet. Like I haven't heard the male vocals sing yet. Other than although again in the car, I loved the songs that they were playing. I thought it
mhm.
was so funny, especially with Serizawa singing along to them. That was so. I was dying laughing because I you could hear him be he was like slightly off too. Like he couldn't actually sing it the notes properly. It was so good.
Mhm.
I guess my big gripe, and I say big gripe as if I'm not gonna give this movie like a 9,
Yeah.
but um the CG, I assume if I went back and really nitpicked Your Name, and I bet especially Weathering with You, I would go back and be able to see some CG crowds or CG in the movie,
Mhm.
like being front and center, even with those movies being about as beautiful as you can get in anime. This one, there were moments of great CG, I thought, as well, like that where it made sense, like some of the car scenes look good, but there was a lot more CG than I expected. Like it was just weird where it felt like normal anime where they're just like, all right, this scene isn't that important, so we're gonna have half of the crowd. And it was so weird too, because like half the crowd would be CG, but then the ones near the forefront would still be hand drawn. Like in a couple of their, like running through the city shots, it would just be like, oh yeah, four of these guys are hand drawn, and then everyone else is CG. It's
Yep.
just weird. Like, and I don't know if that was a meant to like catch your eyes and prevent you from noticing it, but I noticed CG in this movie probably a dozen times more than I have ever noticed it in any other Shinkai film. So and again, it was still really good, and when it was beautiful, like, it was mind-blowing,
Mhm.
it looked stunning, every time the rain popped or
That was
the
sweet.
worm popped,
Yep.
and the rain came down, gorgeous,
The
right?
pinata
But
worm.
yeah, the piñata but it was also still like, what's going on here? Like, why yeah, this isn't what you're known for, Like, I don't know, what do you think about it?
The one that sticks out to me the most is when they get introduced to Shirazawa and him in his car. And when they're like talking on the street and they thought that like they were in a fight, like that was so well animated, and then they drive off and it looks great.
Yes.
And then they cut to like a scene where they're on a bridge and it's like clearly CG. And it's just like it went from like looking incredible to like I'm watching a seasonal. I'm like, huh? And it's not that like it doesn't take anything away from me from like the movie, but I just thought like that was a very interesting choice. And then like immediately then they go to like a zoom in and it's back to being hand drawn. I'm just like, a very
It
interesting decision on that one.
I almost wonder if the fact that it is a Shinkai movie with, again, everything that looks good being so good makes the CG stand out worse
I think
to
a
it
hundred
it
percent.
it definitely has to, because again, the CG isn't bad either, and I'm not some
No.
CG hater. I only hate it when it's used in, like, idol animations,
Mhm.
when an idol show that's supposed to be about the idols
Yeah.
and their music, and then they don't do it. The most important scene is CG, but like in this case, again, like the worm, I'm sure it was like at least partially CG at times, but it didn't look like it. Most of the time when they were like
Yeah.
riding on it, and when it was flowing around, and just being a stunning piece of artwork, like it was yeah. I don't know. I just remember being sitting there being puzzled, being like, "Oh, that's CG. Oh, cool. I'm getting good enough to notice that." I thought to myself and like gave myself an ego boost, and then like 10 minutes later, it happened again, and I'm like, "Hmm, maybe I'm not that good. Maybe it's just like it's actually noticeable." And then that was confirmed. But oh my god, it was so pretty when it was pretty though. Oh my god, loved it.
It was pretty. One thing I want to talk about is the Makoto Shinkai Big Three. Whether not just the movies itself, but each premise has kind of the same thing with the male female leads. How would you rank like the characters and leads in the Makoto Shinkai film?
Oh, that's hard.
I'm gonna spring it on you.
That's yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you've had the entire time that you were driving home to think about this.
Oh
I've got
yeah.
right now. Um, I almost want to say Suzume is the most impressive one in terms of uh competence and then also like growth, I would say, over the course of the movie. Uh Mitsuha and God, I'm forgetting the male leads in Your Name. The two of
Taki.
them, Taki, yes, their relationship, I think, is yeah, and the way that they the way that they bicker and butt heads, I think, is one of the things that makes me love that movie of the big three so
Mm-hmm.
much, and still probably be my favorite. But I'd say that honestly, Suzume was incredible as a character. She persevered through so much. She didn't have those stupid anime character moments, that you're so used to seeing in like seasonals and other, I don't know, shonen or whatever else, where they make a dumb decision that feels out of character. Like everything she did felt in character
Mm-hmm.
to me. So I would say that this, and again, it's probably just because it's the freshest, but to me, Suzume is probably the best of the lead. To be fair to Sota as well, he did a fantastic job too. He kind of takes a back seat, I think, later on, especially in the final act of the movie, being you know, salute
Yeah,
chairman.
yeah.
But he also, you see him warming up to Suzume throughout the first act and the second act, where he's starting to be like, oh, I don't have to carry this burden alone. This person is a good. This is a good person that I'm talking to. Um, Not wanting to disappoint his grandfather and like his elders or his ancestors, whatever, as well. That's a very honorable thing, I think. So and so you see him really suffer too. I mean, he is suffering. uh that little shit Daijin is just
Yeah.
he oh I didn't love how they made us try to like him again at the end. I didn't hate it either, but I was kind of like why does Suzume feel bad when he turns back into the relic or whatever? Like I would have just chucked that shit right in, like I would
Yeah.
not have felt
No
bad at all.
hesitation.
No hesitation. Like, like I don't know. What do you think of the big three?
Ooh, it's tough. Like, cause I do think out of if I had to pick one specific character of the three movies I like the best, it is Suzume. But as like a duo, I think I still like Taki and Mitsuhara from Your Name as like the main cast. It's like no fault to like Sota because 80% of the movie he's a chair. And a lot of times it's used as comic relief. So it's hard to say, but like I loved Suzume. Her character like progression and how they use everything with the doors and sort of like well it's a lot of in the other movies the adventure of like being a youth because in Your Name they go on an adventure searching for something. Weathering with You they don't really like go on an adventure I would say all that much. They're more of like on the run, but it's still like in the process of like going somewhere, running to something or running away from something. And I liked Suzume's. She didn't really like second guess anything, where she just trusted her gut. Even in her dialogue, wasn't hesitation. Where so it's just like, "Aren't you afraid to die?" And she's like, "No," like immediately. Like she seems like she had her mind made up on life, I guess. Um, while still having some like battling demons. I really liked her as a character. It's one of those things where it's like now that I think about it, I like her so much more after I'm letting this sink in, where God, she was so just so good, and just like the relationship with like her aunt too was just great. Honestly, just like the character dynamics and the dialogue between like them when it gets serious was just I thought handled the best out of Shinkai films. Yeah, I really liked like that human interaction that they had in this movie.
For sure. I mean, in Your Name, they hardly talk to each other too, like directly, which is what makes it so special when they do,
Yes,
I
a
think.
100%.
But the again, yeah, Suzume and her aunt, I get Tamaki or Iwato, whatever her name was, they were just they nailed that role, I think. Like they showed the struggles, but also the strengths, I think, that would
Mhm.
come out of a relationship like that, where you know, Tamaki doesn't know she's not her mother, so she's not gonna come down on as hard on her, right? Because she's gonna be like, "Oh, what would my sister want me to be mean? You know, be strict with her, like anything." And in the same way, Suzume is like, "Go find yourself a date." Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be shopping your mother,
Well,
like
it's like okay,
as
because
much.
like Suzume's thing is that she needs to close her door, and then her aunt is that she needs to open it. Like she needs to like stop holding everything back because of Suzume. She needs to like experience something. Like stop letting this because her entire life changed when her sister died, and now that she has this brand new responsibility, and you see that when she's been battling demons herself, and kind of lets it out at Suzume during the rest stop, and it's one of those things like she's been holding this in for years, and that is her demon that she's battling. While it's like, yeah, I love you, but like at the same time, you change the trajectory. It's like guilt. It's like loving guilt. It's really. I just thought that dynamic was great. Like you would do anything for this person, but at the same time, like you lost a part of your life that you'll never get back, and you kind of feel a little cheated. Maybe is the right word, that she couldn't experience this, and I really connected with that. It's just like losing a part of your life that is I don't know that you were not expecting to do. Like I don't know if she was ever planning on having kids, but like she probably I think she said that she's in her 40s
She's 40, yeah.
now. So when she
Clock's
took
ticking.
yeah, well when she took it so when she took in Suzume, she was like 33 or 34. No,
She
or
was no, she
like
would've been like
28,
28, yeah.
28. So
Math is hard, Pete. It's okay.
yeah, it's my bad.
No, I
I had to wake up at 6:30 for work today. So it's just like maybe when you're 28, I know for me, when I was 28, I kind of knew that I wasn't going to have kids. And so what if you were going through that like whole notion of your life that you were never going to have kids, and now you have a kid, and like now you have this responsibility. And I thought that she like shouldered that weight of raising a daughter that she never I don't know wanted to, but there's a really cool dynamic. It would have been. I know that the story's not about her, but for like the time that we got with her, I felt that it was very impactful and just a great addition to this story.
I agree, and I agree completely.
Okay, now it's time for the big three question. Out of these
Okay.
three Makoto Shinkai films, Your Name, Weathering with You, and Suzume, where would you rank them in one, two, in order?
Oh, man, I don't know. I mean, this one's hard to top. Your
It
Name for
is.
me is I've never been so blown away, like, and I guess spoilers for Your Name, if you for some reason you haven't watched it yet, if you haven't, you're a fucking psycho. Like,
That's a bit
seriously, like,
aggressive.
go
What if they
watch
just
it.
got in the
No,
anime?
go watch Your
You
Name.
should
I
go
don't
watch
know.
Your Name, but you're not a
Go watch
psycho.
your you might be. Sorry. But I like that pen drop scene lives rent free in my head.
Oh
I
yeah,
think about it at
the I
least
love
once a
you.
week.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it just when they're talking and then all of a sudden the conversation cuts off
Mhm.
and the pen drops and there's dead silence. That completely like that was the moment where I truly got sucked into anime. I think more so than I had already started to become. Uh, I cannot speak highly enough about Your Name. I think it's the best selling Shinkai film for a reason. I'd put this one probably number two. I need to sit on that because I loved Weathering with You as well. but I do think that this one gave better closure on the story. In terms of like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Like what they're doing now, post the story's resolution makes more sense. Made more sense to me
Mhm.
than like I don't really get what happens at the end of what really Tokyo is just constantly raining now and like underwater. Really?
Yes.
Is that like seriously? That's the story? You know? Like I don't know. I think I've these are all probably in my top 50 favorite things I've ever watched, probably even top 25. So it's not saying much when I put them 1, 2, and 3, I don't think. But what about you?
I mean, that's exactly where I am, where, like, in my top 100, Your Name and Weathering with You are right next to each other. Like, that's how close I feel that they are. And honestly, I think Suzume is gonna be right. I'm gonna think on it too a little bit, but they each do something different that like separates them from the others. Where I think like Your Name has like the best story. I think Weathering with You has the best message. I think Suzume has the best character. To me, where like I'll probably put Suzume at 3, only because a few things I really miss Radwimps. I do think to me that the music is a huge part of Makoto Shinkai films, if not like as the animation and the story. I think like the music is that impactful in his stories. I also thought like the beginning of Suzume was like a little too fast. I feel like they were jumping into things like right away, which is very different than the other two films. Not to say that's bad. I guess it's more of that I prefer the storytelling style of Your Name and Weathering with You. So I'm gonna go Suzume 3, Your Name 2, Weathering with You 1. Um, but it's like 9.8, 9.79, 9.77. It's like that's how close they
Yeah,
are.
they are all incredible. And by the way, the word Suzume, doing some quick googling and researching here, means sparrow or like small tears of a sparrow,
Ooh.
apparently. So uh, that's interesting because sparrows travel great distances in their migrations here in the United States, at least. So maybe that's a little. Well, not maybe. Of course, that's why her name is Suzume. There's always a reason, right,
Yeah.
behind anything that happens. So that's cool. Oh man, I want to watch it again. Don't you? Like, I need to go watch
I
it
kind of
again
want to
sometime.
go back and watch like Weathering with You and
That too.
see like because I have it at 1. I'm like, do I really remember it being my favorite Shinkai film? Because the more that I sit on Suzume, the more I like it. And maybe I'll change my mind tomorrow. But like for right now, that's where I'm feeling it because man, it's just like I don't know. I guess I was blown away by Your Name in terms of like the animation and all that. Weathering with You, I was blown away, and this and Suzume, I just thought was good. It's what I expected, and I thought that they could have had some opportunities to go above and beyond, and I don't want to say cut corners, but kind of cut corners a little bit that I wish that they didn't do. Maybe a hot
Com-
take. Who knows?
no, completely fair. I I so this is so much fun. I loved this movie. Oh, man, there's so many little Easter eggs too that we didn't even talk about, like little references or um I guess one big thing that I thought was done, I think we talked a little bit about it, but this was probably the funniest of any of the big three or any and of course I know I've seen every other Shinkai film and none of them are very comedic. You know, the like Your Name was
Yeah,
really
they
the
have their
big break.
moments.
Right. But like Your Name was the one that finally really brought that like everything there was a joke or some sort of like thing to make you smile
Hmm.
or think in those moments versus like I don't know the tone of 5 centimeters per second or Voice of a Distant Star, like very very different tonally compared to the last three movies he's done. And I would say that this one was the funniest throughout for me. I thought like I don't know, I was laughing my ass off at the just little things happening in the background, her standing on him and then being like, "Oh, by the way, thank you for can I stand on
Yeah,
you?"
can
It's
I
like
step on you? Yeah, that was
yeah,
funny.
it's like,
Yeah.
"You already stepped on me." Like, little moments like that were really, really fun, uh, and at first I was also like kind of creeped out by the idea that these two could have ended up romantically involved, and then it
Ooh, okay, because
grew on me because it's like, okay, at first I thought the guy was like 30, you
yeah,
know, he looks old, but then it's like, all right, he's probably actually like 20, and she's, let's say, like
16.
16,
She's a
16
junior
to
in high school.
17.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like a little better, still not great, but I think given the circumstances, I'm willing to let it slide a little bit, you know. Um, that moment where she definitely kissed him and it woke him up, and he's like, "Did you just do something to me?" And she's like, "Nope." You know, like that was a cute, fun
Hmm.
little moment. I don't know. But like, yeah, to me, like the relationship aspect was didn't bother me that much. And I also like that it wasn't like some big dramatic kiss to end the
Yeah.
movie, which he never
He
really
gave
does
her a
that
hug, and
either.
then he's like, "I'll see you in
Yeah,
2 years when you're 18."
pretty much, maybe. I don't know what he had to go back and close all the gates or something,
Yeah.
right? Um and again, I guess we didn't see them really like interact after that because we just saw in the well, we see them obviously talk at the very end, and that's it, right? They say
Mhm.
hello to each other again,
And
and it's
also,
like
like,
clearly,
I mean, it's probably romantic love, but like, it's not necessarily that like she loves him romantically. I guess. Like, I mean, let's be real.
yeah.
That's probably what it is, but I think that there is like an off chance that like it's not that. But here's why I do think it is. Another Miyazaki reference. I don't think you've seen this movie. I was thinking that this was like these characters were like Howl and from Howl's Moving Castle. That these two leads were very a nod to Howl's Moving Castle, where Sota is like, he's the one that has like the powers and stuff like that, and he's the one like locking the doors, but it's actually Suzume that's like saving Sota, and that kind of happens in Howl's Moving Castle. And so I was getting like really heavy vibes with that as well. So I was like, oh, I wonder if people who like Howl's Moving Castle are really gonna like this movie. And I also wonder if anyone else is gonna put that reference together. I could be like talking shit, but like I feel like they have a very similar dynamic in Howl's that they had in Suzume. Let me know what you
I would.
think out there.
I was just say I wouldn't be able to tell you, but people in the comments can for sure.
Bro, you would love Howl's Moving Castle.
Oh, I'm sure I would. I just need to sit down and watch Ghibli. Other than
Sophie, that's her name. Sophie and Howl. That was the vibe I was getting a lot.
I've only seen Grave of the Fireflies, so the happiest of the Ghibli
Mhm.
films. So, but yeah, I don't know. Do you have any other major things that you wanted to talk about? I mean, again, I could rant about this movie, I think, forever, and I'm going to.
Mhm.
It's great, but is there anything else that really like stuck out to you, or that you think is worth discussing for any reason?
No, I'm intrigued to see if somebody does like a deep dive, like analysis on some of the things that are maybe more Japanese cultured that I think that could really elevate this movie. I think there's something like with the cats that I just don't have that information right now. And I think if somebody told me like what they like symbolized, then maybe that this is even like a higher ranking down the road because I love that stuff when it comes to like animes. It's like tell me more. Tell me why this existed. Why this mattered.
I took it as yin and yang just because they were black and white, but maybe that was just, again, reading into it too much. I have no idea. That's how, because and
Oh,
again,
that's good.
my interpretation as well, and of course the black cat is the one that's more violent or whatever, darker, I guess, like the one that's actually fighting the worm, versus then the white cat is the
Mhm.
one leading them, leading them to the light, leading them to the where they need to be, destiny, whatever, blah blah blah. I did you interpret the black cat as the person that was like really driving Tamaki towards saying those awful things to Suzume? Like, when they were at the rest stop. That's how I, like the fact that it was standing behind her. That's how I
Yeah.
interpreted it. Um and then of course, she also sits there and goes like, "Oh, I don't know what came over me." It's like,
Mhm.
well, maybe they knew that they had to bring that out of you in order to progress, help them progress and continue to go down their
I
their
definitely think
journey.
that's what it symbolized. Yep.
Well, look at me being all smart
Look at
sometimes,
you.
I know, I know.
Look at us. Who would have thought?
Not me.
Not me.
Not me. Yeah, that's something to add to the Discord soundboard. But yeah, uh, I don't know. Do you want to do closing thoughts then,
Yeah,
and our scores as well?
yeah. You wanna go first? You want me to go first? How about I go first because I think you're gonna
Yeah.
say more.
Okay.
Okay, I love this film. I love Suzume as a main character. She was fantastic. I loved her brashness, her rationale. Everything about her was wonderful. The animation was like a 9 out of 10. It was killer. I do the thing is like when I see these types of film, I'm expecting a 10 out of 10. And I'm also expecting rad wimps. It's a huge part of Makoto Shinkai films for me. It's not going to be the same for everybody, but to me, I just when I think of Shinkai films, I think of the music as well. And I thought, well, however, I do think like the opening like whistle song or not whistle, but like her humming in this like tone that's like haunting at times was I think that's gonna like live rent free in my head for a while. So that was really cool, but I just think that there was moments where they could have implemented the soundtrack a little bit more, which is I'm expecting from a really high budget film. That being said, this was a fantastic film. Wouldn't surprise me if this is the best film all year. I'm gonna give it a 9. Yeah, I loved it.
Alrighty, yeah. Do, loo, 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 loo,
Yeah.
loo, loo,
Dun-
loo, 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 loo. Oh man, that's yeah. It's just like I don't know, gonna be a niche reference, but I just saw Hades Town in on the stage, and anyone who's seen that play, there's a certain just literally it's la 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 la, and they sing that like a dozen times in the show, and every time it's just like, God damn it! I saw it like a month and a half ago, and it is still every day I wake up and I'm thinking about that fucking melody. So I think that's gonna happen to me with Suzume now. Uh, this was so cool. It had a little bit of everything for me, I think, with the historical and mythological aspects that were involved that we are used to seeing in Shinkai movies. I don't want to repeat myself too much on stuff I've said earlier, but like what Pete said, animation was great except for those very random, noticeable CG moments. Which again, it's not like it's bad CG. It's just that it was CG, so you can tell because everything else in this movie is so beautifully hand
It's like
drawn.
flawless, and then
It's so
yeah,
yeah, and then it just stands out. So it's not a bad yeah, and I agree. The music was less Radwimps than normal, but still it still had Radwimps, man. Like for me. So I had enough.
it did.
Uh
Yeah,
it did. Like
technically,
I had enough, and I enjoyed the a lot of the soundtrack throughout the rest of the movie too. What one thing I will note, it is once again Makoto Shinkai telling the same story for the 8th movie in a row, kind of. I think you could do that. I think a lazy critic would say that, or a person who doesn't like Shinkai films might be able to say that and make that case. However, I think that this one, if you were to compare Your Name to Weathering with You versus Weathering with You to this, to Suzume, the similarities between Weathering with You and Your Name are so much more so
yep.
than the similarities between Weathering with You and Suzume, and that goes beyond just the fact that those other 2 share a universe and this one doesn't. At the end of the day, is it a guy and a girl fighting destiny, fighting whatever they're doing? Sure, but I hate to break this to you, but most stories in human literature involve a guy and a girl. Yeah, or a guy and a love interest, or anything along those like I think that that's a very uh stupid like to put it very bluntly, a very stupid complaint to have. These movies are different enough. They're not the same story. They may have some similar messaging and theming, but they are not the same. This is so worth seeing. um I want to like take my parents to go see it seriously, because they're not big into anime, but I think that they would enjoy this movie. I'd probably have to get them to compromise on seeing a dub, but I
Yeah,
bet they would enjoy this. Like they would enjoy seeing how beautiful it is, and again, the story. It was so fun. It was such a fun ride. Like the journey through Japan from the south to the north.
yes.
Like that was so cool. It's similar to what Pete's about to be doing, and I'm so fucking jealous of, as he's
I'm literally leaving in 12 hours. Yeah.
to go to Japan.
Yep.
This lucky duck got to see this movie beforehand. Um, Man, I love this, and I can't wait to talk about this movie with everybody. That as people continue to see it more and more, cannot wait for the next Shinkai film. That'll come in probably 3 years or 2 years at
Three,
this
4
point.
years, yeah.
2 to 4 years at this point. Um, yeah, this was so much fun. Oh God. But for me, a 9 out of 10, I think is where it's gonna sit, just because it's not Your Name. For me, like Your Name, just I think the big thing for me with this movie is that it built progressively really, really well throughout, and there wasn't a weak point in the movie, at least for me. But there also wasn't that one. So again, like
There's no like massive climax like the other two. That's why I
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
too.
Well, yeah, or there, and it wasn't even like in Your Name, the climax or the pen drop that we talked about probably 10, 15 minutes ago. That's like a third, two-thirds of the way into the movie. There's still plenty of time
Yeah.
after the fact, but that sticks with you, right? In Weathering with You, like you talked about, them falling through the sky and Brad Wimp's coming in and
Yes.
just
Oh,
like
the
that
Great
beautiful
Escape. Oh.
Oh, that was so good. Like that stuck with me, and again, rent free in my head. Suzume, yeah, the stabbing moment into the worm is cool, beautifully done. And there are a lot of moments like that in the movie. Every time they closed the key, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, agreed.
But nothing really no specific scene sat there for me and made me go, "Holy
Yeah, like
shit, that was
what's the moment from this that's gonna stick out to people? And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't
I
know.
don't
Where
know
I think
either."
the other two had like clear cut because everybody agreed like that was it. Like that is the iconic scene for this movie. Suzume, maybe the last closing of the door, but like it's not the same. It's cool. It's great. It means a lot. It's just not the same.
Mm, I agree. Yeah, and so yeah, that's why for me it's a 9 where again, it's a very strong 9 though.
Very
Like
strong, yes.
a very strong 9 out of 10. Go see this fucking movie. It is so good. I cannot get enough Shinkai in my life, and yeah, this was so much fun. I again, we're gonna finish this episode and still be talking about it probably for another 20 minutes.
Probably.
But yeah,
So let's do that. Thank you so much. If you have made it this far, if you want to support us, the best way to do so is to like, comment, subscribe, leave a review on whatever platform you're watching or listening to us on. Got a bunch of stuff coming up in terms of content while I am out of the country. So look forward to that. Otherwise, thank you so much and we'll see you next time.